Hey guys, going to make something today. I'm going to make an LED panel light. I'm going to put it just above my shoulder, my left shoulder up here, just to stop this sort of shadow, so I've got a bit more ambient light coming from different directions, a bit better lighting for making videos and also just for generally doing electronics and stuff. These are basically all the parts we're going to need. There'll be a few extra little bits and pieces that I'll find out as I go along, but I'll take note of those anyway. You'll find down below the whole list of the everything you need and some links to where you can find where to buy some of the parts. So what do we need? Well, we've got a panel of aluminium. That's a 30 by 30 centimeters, 300 by 300 millimeters square. I think it's about 2 millimeters, but you can use a bit thicker if you want. I wouldn't go much smaller because you need that thickness just for strength. I just cut this on a drop saw with a metal blade, so it'll come up nice and smooth and square. And then we've also got some plastic. This is just slightly diffused. I could probably go a bit more diffused. Even the stuff that they use for like the fluorescent lighting in offices, that kind of prismatic panel might be pretty good as well. So maybe I'll play around with that in the future and see how the effects look. But yep, that's just some slightly diffused plastic. Then I've got some pieces here. These are going to become the sides. So they're cut at 90 degrees. There's a little trick with how long to make these. You don't want to make them 30 millimeters, 300 millimeters long. You want to make them a bit longer, and I'll explain that in a second. We've got 4 of those, cut at 45 degrees, so we got 4 sides, kind of like a picture frame. And I think that's about 25 or 30 mil. What does it say here? Yeah, it's 30 mil by 15. So 15 by 30 by 15 U-channel. And that's cut on the drop saw once again, so it's all nice and perfect. Countersunk screws, you don't have to use countersunk, but I decided I would just so it's a bit neater. Washers and nuts and whatnot. Power switch, a DC jack for the input power. I've got myself a 12 volt, 4.16 amp. So basically a 4 amp, 12 volt power supply from Akihabara, 400 yen. Cheap bit of surplus gear, so any decent current power supply that's the right voltage for your LEDs. And of course, the LEDs. Now these are a little bit important which one to get. You don't want to get just any white LED for video work. You need something with a high CRI or color rendering index. And this is above 90, which is really good, so it renders the color accurately and doesn't have a color cast. I'm actually using the same LEDs just up here to light my bench now, and it is a very nice color, a very nice white. These are a natural white, which is about 4,000 to 4,500 Kelvin, and that's in between warm white and cool white. It's a middle of the road, sort of not too warm, not too like yellow and red, and not too cool or like blue and purple. It's just in the middle, so it's really nice. And yeah, it's a 5 meter string, and it is 5630 LEDs. The little chip LEDs on the strips, and it's 60 LEDs per meter. And then times that by 5 meters, and you'll get how many LEDs there are. So that's just I'll open the pack, and it's just a spool, if I can get it open. Just a spool of LED strip. And we're going to stick those in strips all the way up, and then wire them together. So we'll need some wire as well. Hook up wire just to solder these together, which I haven't shown here, but I do have some around somewhere. So these, the reason I chose for this to be 30 by 30 centimeters is because these LEDs, if you can kind of see, they're in sections of 3 LEDs, and you can actually cut them into sections. But I've figured out that each section we can have 6, I think it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections equals 30 centimeters. So if we cut this whole spool into 6 section pieces, and then we can line them up all nicely. So I kind of, maybe I should have made it a little bit bigger, just so that we don't have problems with the space for the wires, but it should be alright. So if you make one, maybe make it, rather than 30 by 30, make it 31 centimeters by 31 centimeters, just to have a little bit more room. But what restricted me was the size of the aluminium and the plastic. It comes in Japan. You can buy them in preset sizes, and one of the dimensions of those pre-cut sizes is 30 centimeters. So that was a bit of a restricting thing for me. If I bought it a larger size, I would have had a lot of wastage around the side, which I would have just cut off and discarded. So yeah, it will just fit, and it'll be it'll be alright in the end, so no worries. So the first thing to do would probably be to get the frame made up. So as I was saying before about cutting these pieces, you want to cut them longer than the width of your piece of aluminium and plastic. The reason for that is there's thickness there. So if this was perfectly thin in an imaginary universe, you could cut this to be exactly the same length, but you need to actually add the thickness of the piece of metal to the length, because it's on a 45-degree angle. So that's going to make the inside, you need the inside measurement of that angle. From there on the inside all the way down to there on the inside. And that's got to be your 30 millimeters, 300 millimeters, 30 centimeters. Not the outside, because of that angle takes up a bit extra. So make sure you measure it correctly, and maybe even add a little bit more. So just say this is 2 millimeters thick, you cut it like 32 or thereabouts, add a little bit more, make it maybe 35, so then you've got a little bit of wiggle room, because also you'll find that on the inside of these channels it's not a perfect angle. There's always a slight radius, and then if you don't have that extra room, it's going to be too tight and it's not going to fit together properly. So you just a little bit of wiggle room so that things will fit and it won't be too tight and too squeezy. So once you've got all that cut out, what we have to do is figure out where we're going to put our screws, because you need one side of these we've got to have the aluminium and the other side we're going to have the plastic. So we have to drill, I'm probably going to put 3 screws in each piece, so 1, 2, 3, and then the same 1, 2, 3, and then all the way around. And that's going to give us 3, 6, 9, 12 screws per side. Not too many to become tedious, but enough to hold the thing together. Being countersunk, I'm going to countersink the holes, and that just will involve either using a drill bit, carefully going in and you know, making the countersunk shape, or I do have a countersink bit somewhere which I might use as well. So I'll go ahead and drill all those holes. I'll be back in a sec, and we'll see about putting this thing together. Okay, so I've got the sides all drilled and countersunk and whatnot, and I've taped them up into a square. You can see I've put numbers as well, so I get the thing around the right way, because by doing these by hand, they're not going to be perfectly positioned. So if I rotate it, then the holes might not line up. So I've got to make sure that everything goes back in the position that I've measured it all out in. So I've taped it together. You can see on the ends, got it all taped into a box, and that's going to be our back panel where our LEDs are lined up on. So if I turn that over, I can just mark out, oh, it's blowing out, a bit too bright. I can mark out these holes and then drill through the aluminium, and they'll be lined up perfectly. Also, you might be able to hear, that's that play that I was talking about. How you want to have a little bit of wiggle room, just to make sure that it's not too tight and it's not pressing up against anything. stopping it from being square, because you need a little bit of adjustment, just make sure it's square. Also, talking about being square, you want to have a some sort of square, so you can just make sure that it's not a little bit of a parallelogram. Make sure that's perfectly centered and squared, then we can drill our holes. Alright, so I've got our holes drilled in the aluminium plate and in our diffuser panel all the way around, nice and neat. So we'll put this one away because we won't need that for a while. Now we've got to play with this one. So basically we've got 5 meters worth of LED strip, and we need to cut it into 30cm strips, and that's going to give us 16.6. Now 30 divided by 2 is 15, so if we put one like a strip, 5mm a strip, 5mm a strip, because each strip is 5mm, if we put them all lined up exactly like 1, then 2, then 3, it's going to be 30 strips, but we can space them out a bit, so it's like you have a strip and then you miss one, then a strip and then you miss one. They'll give us 15 strips, so that means we're going to have a little bit more than what we need, so that's good for a bit of spare. And all we have to do is basically cut these into length, 30cm lengths, and stick them on. So I'm going to use the cutting mat here, because that's got the nice 5mm grid there, which is the same as the LED strip, and we'll cut these and stick them on. Next step after that is to solder them all together. Alright, so there's all our bits. Now I'm going to probably offset this a little bit, so if I move that up just so it's in the middle of the frame, rather than lining it up kind of like that and then putting it there, I'm going to go half and then start doing it. So there's a little bit of a different gap. That just means rather than being a large gap on the top and a small gap on the bottom, or the other way around, it'll be more central. So I'll figure out exactly how I'm going to space this so that they're nice and centralized rather than up or down, and then matter of just gluing them down using the double side tape, peel it off, stick it down, and it's easy as that. Oh, another thing, make sure you get the strips the right way around, so you have positive, negative, positive, negative. You don't want to get it upside down so it goes positive, negative, negative, positive, because if you solder it in the sequence, you might end up with a strip that doesn't work because you've got it reverse polarity. So just be sure that you put the strips up. You can read the writing on there, 12 volts and the plus and minus. Just make sure it goes positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, all the way down. And there's our completed LED stickering on. Anyway, all the strips are there. I've got some shorter ones, you can see here, here and here, just so we're away from the screws, so we don't have any problems with shorting out or anything. Only lose a couple of LEDs, so it's not going to be a big deal. Also, I did actually leave them shifted down a bit. You see there's a larger gap at the top than at the bottom, and that's so that I can put the switch and the input jack, the power in jack on this side. I won't impinge on the LEDs too much. Just a little bit of extra space there for the switch and that to stick in, and that's the LED stuck on our panel. So the next step is to wire it all up. So what I'm going to do, I've got this wire here, 20 AWG 600 volt, just because I use it for tube amps and that sort of thing. So I've got a high voltage roll of cable, but that's going to be put down the side. So I'm going to have red on one side, black on the other for positive and negative. I'm doing it one side and then the other side for two reasons. One, it means that there's not all wiring all crammed up on one side. It's easier to build and neater. Also, if we put the positive and negative on this side, these LEDs have a chance of being dimmer than these ones because the power's coming in here and you've got the resistance of the lines there and back. It probably won't have much of a problem in practice, but I figure if I put positive here, and it's got to come all the way through anyway, so all the LEDs should be even. The other thing to that is that maybe by having the power come in the top and across and then back up again, these may be brighter than these, but the distances we're talking about, it's not going to be a problem at all, I don't think. Not unless you get some real sensitive measuring equipment. But I'll go ahead and do that. It's probably going to be a bit time consuming, so I'll pause the camera. I'm going to just cut little pieces just to jump between, and then I'll just solder them all in down the side, then back up the other side with red and black. So I'll show you what that looks like once I'm done. Alright, so I've got it all done. You can see the red coming down here and the black coming down here, and we have our two fly leads which will connect to our switch and to our input jack. Now there's a test you have to do right now. Get your multimeter out on the resistance setting, and you want to check between one of your solder points on the negative and the aluminium plate. Make sure it says like 0 or open circuit, and then the same on the positive, open circuit. That just make sure that you haven't got any shorts down to the plate, because if one side of the positive, one of these points is shorted down and then one of the negative is shorted down, you're going to have a dead short straight across and you're going to blow your power supply. So make sure there's no shorts. In our case, it's all perfect. And we can test it out, see if it works. So let's hook this up. I'll just stuff these wires into the end of the power connector here. Center positive. Oh, hang on, let me get that right. That is bright. Jeez. Looks like, oh, we've got one dead one here. That's a bummer. I might have to grab one off of a spare strip. I'll replace that one. Might be able to resolder it or something. But yeah, apart from that, it all seems to be working. Wow, I can't even look at that. It's so bright. Oh, I've got to turn that off. So, next step after this is to start bolting it together. We've got to drill the holes in the side for the switch as well, and for the power jack. So I'm going to use probably a step drill, because they go quite large, big enough for the power switch. And we can solder these wires to the switch and to the jack, and then yeah, start screwing it together. Alright, so at the next stage, putting it together. So I've put the switch and the input jack, the DC jack there. I only put one wire and I'm going to do the rest when I solder these up. Just a resistor and whatnot for the indicator LED there. And the rest is just the active and positive onto the switch, and then negative onto the jack. And that's pretty much all the wiring we need. And then on the two sides, you can see I've got two bolts there, straight through. So they're poking outwards. That's for the mount, because I'm going to make like a U-shaped piece of flat bar, and that's going to slip onto there with some big thumb screws. So I've just put the bolt through, washer and a nut with some high-strength Loctite, the 263, and that'll stop those from coming undone when you're tweaking them up with the thumb screws. So that's all ready to go. And then this one is just no holes at all, didn't need anything there. So now I've got to put it together, but there's going to be a bit of a problem if you think about it. You might figure it out. If we put one of these panels in, we're not going to be able to get inside to put the nuts onto the other panel. Now we could put Rivnuts on these, on the aluminium here. That's like a rivet that's inside is threaded, so you can use it like a nut. So you can use a blind, what's called a blind nut. It's a nut that you can't get to inside a chassis or inside something like this. That'll work, but I don't have any. They're all in Australia, my set. So instead, I'm going to screw the panel here in with nuts and bolts, but I'm going to super glue the nut onto the panel before I put it in. There's going to be all the nuts around, all super glued on. That way we can put the bolt in from the other side and tighten it up, and the nut will hold there until it's tight. For the plastic piece on top, I'm not going to glue anything on, because I don't want the super glue to fog up the plastic, because the fumes from the super glue can leave like that white powdery stuff on whatever you're gluing. So I don't want that on the plastic. So the plastic's going to go in first with a nut, a bolt, and a washer, because the washer I want to spread the load on the plastic so it doesn't crack. And then the bottom panel will be in but not screwed in, and then we'll screw that in from the behind with the nuts glued there. So let's get to it, and I'll give you some updates as I'm going through. Alright, it's all together. Finally, it was a pain in the bum to get together with these screws. I think the next time I do it, I'm not going to use nuts and bolts. I'll use either the Rivnuts, like I mentioned before, or I'll use self-tapping screws, especially in the back, where the screws go into the aluminium. I think I'm going to use self-tapping screws. That's probably the better way to do it, because you can't get in there. And the super glue idea, it was a pain. The super glue just wasn't holding very well, so it was a have to get these things like lined up perfectly, but you can't line up perfectly because you can't put it together before you put the nuts in. So, and once you put it together to test fit, you can't get in there to put the nuts in anyway. So it's kind of a big guesswork, you know, big pain. So yeah, on the back, definitely use self-tapping screws, and on the front, you probably don't want to use self-tapping screws on plastic because it will just crack the plastic out. But yeah, have to think about it. But you can actually put the plastic in first and screw it all up into place, except for one end, and then you can put the back in afterwards. So yeah, nuts and bolts on the front, self-tapping screws on the back, and it'll probably be a lot easier. So anyway, enough rambling about that. Let's see how it works. So I've got the power switch and the power jack. And if I turn that on, lights up red, beautiful, and it is really, really bright. So that's auto correcting for the brightness. But if I lock that, lock the exposure to there, boom, jeez. So yeah, that's working quite well actually. So I might just hold it up about where I want to use it, and we'll see how it looks. So if I hold it up there, it will stick my my drill there. That's turned off and that's turned on. So what do you reckon? I reckon that might turn out pretty good, actually. Get rid of all the shadows. Alright, well the next step, of course, is to make a mount for it. So, I'm going to have to get a bit of aluminium, maybe 30mm by 3mm bar. And we're going to bend it, come from this side, bend it across the bottom, and then up, and put some thumb screws. Or wing nuts or something on the ends here. So you can tighten it up, that way you can adjust it this way. And then right in the middle there, we're going to drill a hole, and then we'll have a bolt coming through so we can put on a mount. Maybe use a something we can put on a tripod or something, you know, the standard tripod screw. What's that, 1/4 inch or something? I can't remember. But yeah, we'll have something like that, so then that can have a single bolt and it can tilt that way, so we can go all directions like a gimbal sort of thing. So I'll dig out some bar stock and see what we can figure out. Alright, we've got the arm on there now. That was pretty easy. All I had to do was get some 3mm by 30mm bar stock and just stuck it in a vise and gave it a whack with a hammer to get some nice corners on there, make it into the right shape. And then I put that onto those bolts sticking out the side, and I've used these things to hold it on. These are like a finger hand nut thingy. Come as two parts. You got the black on the outside and the orange little button in the middle. You stick your nut inside. They come with different size nuts. Use different size nuts for different size hand screws, but this one's like I think it was an M6. Stick your nut in there, push the cap on, and you're done. It's real handy. So that's two of those are holding this bar on. One there and one there. I've got a hole in the top, and I've decided I'm going to use this aluminium extrusion with a bolt through there. That's going to go through the hole. Couple of washers on either side, and then this will go on, and I can tighten that up, and I can get two directions, up, down, left, right, point it wherever I want. This bar will then be, I've got some caps on the end just to make it look nice, but that will be C-clamped or G-clamped, wherever you are in the world, whatever you call them, to the shelves above my camera, and that'll let me angle this thing wherever I want to get some light in the shot. Also, I've put some foam corners on just so I don't bump my head and hurt myself. And we've got the power cable tied down, and that'll plug in, and we're pretty much ready to go. Oh, one other thing, I did actually replace the glued nuts with proper Rivnuts all the way around on both sides. It just made it so much easier to put together, so I do recommend using Rivnuts. Don't try and just use normal nuts. It's a nightmare. So yeah, one thing to note, when you put the Rivnuts on the back panel, the aluminium panel, just you cinch them up and they're good. You just crush them with the tool or whatever, and they're fine. But when you're doing it on the plastic, you got to be real careful. If you do it too tight, you're gonna crack the plastic and blow it out. You just got to do it just until they bite. You get the tool and it's like a pop rivet gun, but slightly different. And you got to feel it real gentle. Otherwise, yeah, it'll just crack. It'll crack. This plastic doesn't take compression stress very well, so it'll blow out with anything more than just a tiny little bit. So yeah, as long as you're careful with that, you'll be fine. And the thing goes together and, if need be, comes apart relatively easily. So this is ready to stick up on the above the camera. I'll plug that in. We're pretty much done. Awesome. And this is a thing all in place. I'm just hand holding the camera at the moment. Normally the camera sits up here and looks straight down at my desk. I'm going to end up having some other options for the camera so we can get a bit more interesting shots, but for now it just sits on here and looks straight down. And there's the light. So that's going to sit kind of at over my left shoulder, getting rid of some of the shadows that would be normally cast. You can see I've got the brace, or the mount, coming over the top and down again. That lets me rotate like that and then lock it into place with the thumb screws. These are just little plastic kind of thumb screws that you put the normal M6 nut inside and it clips in, and then it just works just like a thumb screw. They're really neat. And then of course it's got the single one on the top here, so I can rotate that way. So I've got a full adjustment, just like a operating theatre light kind of idea. And the power cable comes up over, a bit of slack there to allow for rotation, a bit of slack there to allow for that rotation. A few G-clamps, just a cheap $2 G-clamps, holding it to the shelf there. I use G-clamps rather than screwing into place, because that means I can just move it around as I want. So I might go, oh, I need it on the other side for this shot, or somewhere else for whatever shot, so I can just easily take it off and put it wherever I want. Comes down to behind, move the mic out the way, behind here, and there's a power supply. Just a 12 volt 4 amp, and that plugs in, and it works really well. Look at that. So normally, up until now, I've been using the LED strips, which are up there, and this desk lamp, which gives me a little bit of extra light. So that's the lighting you've seen normally. But now we've got, boom, all this extra light. So it's going to be quite nice, I think. So I'll put the camera back up there, and we'll see how it looks in comparison with the standard shots, something a bit more familiar. And now for the money shot. What does it look like before and after? So I'll grab some random stuff off the shelf and whatnot. What else? A few rolls of cable. So that's what we're looking like right now. I need some more colour. And something green. That'll do. So that's what we're looking like right now. If I turn it on, boom! I'd say that's a little bit better. A little bit more light. I also have got a light up here. So I can turn that one on as well, and we get even more light. So that's actually looking really good now. A lot better than what it was. So it's going to give me a bit better image quality and help me make slightly better videos. Well, they'll at least look better. Can't say much for the content. But anyway, that's 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. And that's all we got for this video. Off and on. Pow. We'll see you in the next one.